Okay, we're all there, right? Okay, great.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Penny, could you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to wish everyone a happy Mardi Gras and welcome you to the March Committee of the Whole meeting of the District 94 School Board. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Here. Ms. Doremus. Present. Ms. Munoz. Here. Mr. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Sake. Mr. Zuniga. Here.
All right, that brings us to public participation. Is there any public participation? Hearing none, we move on to reports and information. COVID mitigation recap.
Good evening. Just wanted to provide a board with a recap of where we are with our COVID mitigation strategies and a little bit of a context as to how we got here as well. So as you are aware, the CDC has updated its school guidance. However, last I checked today, the CDC's website has not reflected their school guidance changes yet, although they have made their updates elsewhere. So based upon what I can gather from the CDC website and as well as reading various articles, the following are the updates or changes that, as far as I can read, I'm aware of. Number one, community COVID levels are now determined with new metrics that involve hospitalization data, whereas previously community levels used to be based upon community transmission data. On the CDC's website, as an FYI, due page is indicated at a low risk level. Number two, masks are no longer required on school buses or school provided transportation. And from my understanding, they're still reviewing public transportation, that guidance. Number three, masks are not part of the mitigation strategies for medium or low levels, COVID levels for the community, but they are recommended when the community level is high. In terms of the status of emergency rules and executive orders, the following is a summary, to the best of my knowledge, of what has happened in the past and where we are right now. And if you follow along, you'll notice that February was quite the whirlwind when it came to COVID mitigation and rules and orders coming from the courts. On February 4th, Judge Grishow issued 2 TROs in response to the lawsuits filed, and the TROs were in effect for 10 days. Then on February 14th, IDPH emergency rules expired. On February 15th, JCAR, or the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, blocked IDPH's renewal of those rules. On February 16th, the appellate court dismissed the state's appeal of the TRO, calling it moot since the rules are no longer in effect and that the rules have expired and were not renewed. Then on February 25th, the Illinois Supreme Court did not hear the state's appeal and the TROs were vacated. Now, some would interpret those decisions or those statements to mean that the TRO was therefore overturned, and yet some also take this to mean that the TRO was simply vacated because the TRO is not necessarily is not necessary since the rules have expired and the renewal of those rules were blocked by JCAR. And that is part of the basis for why the appellate court dismissed the appeal, basically stating that the appeal was moot. However, the TRO have already expired, and the circuit court now needs to make a formal ruling on the lawsuits. Then on February 25th, also the same time as the Illinois Supreme Court issuing their statement, the governor issued a statement that the mask mandate for schools was lifted. And then yesterday, February 28th, Governor Pritzker issued a new executive order, Order 2022-06, and that order rescinded the mandates in the previous executive orders. So, as best as I can tell, we are able to continue with our current strategies, and hopefully they will not change for the rest of the year. And those strategies include optional mask use, social distancing to the extent practical to continue with in-person learning, obviously increased ventilation to the maximum that we've been able to do, as well as continued emphasis on proper hygiene and making hand sanitizer available. And as best as I can tell, my feelings are that we are in a spot where this probably will be how we'll end the school year, and I'm hoping that that is the case. But I thought it would be good to provide the board with just that recap as to where we are right now and what is the status of the TROs, the lawsuit, the decisions, and executive orders.
Well, what is the current climate of the building as far as any tensions between those who choose to mask and those who choose not to?
From my read of it, and I've been out in the hallways, it's been great. On the first day, when we had the recommended masks, I would say a high percentage of our students were still masked. And since then, this is just anecdotal information, and Dr. Dwyer could probably chime in if he wanted to share, but it seems like more and more students are feeling comfortable without the masks, but the climate has been great.
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing. Anecdotally, we think about 80–85% of students are still wearing a mask full-time, but no issues in regards to there being any tension or hostility from whatever decisions students are making.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding COVID status? All right, annual furniture order.
Thank you. I am currently working on that annual furniture order. I'm expecting this order to be larger than the planned $50,000, as staff are using some spaces that need furniture to meet the needs of to meet the demands of the pandemic. Additionally, we're still in need of furniture for some spaces that were not addressed at the end of the construction project, such as breakout rooms and certain office spaces. During COVID, the breakout rooms were mainly utilized by staff as their workspace, and some offices are still utilizing old library tables as their desks. As I'm working on the budget for next year, I will have to ensure that the budget can support closer to $90,000 expense, which I'm assuming it will be able to support this expense. If not, we'll obviously adjust.
Okay, that brings us to student fees.
Fees are brought to the board annually for approval, which will be I'll be asking for approval at the March board meeting. At this time, we are not planning on any change from last year.
And just wanted to make sure the board was aware, if you look at the student fees, student parking is not included in there because in the past, the decisions were made for various reasons to not charge a student parking fee. And I think for this year, that definitely was a benefit for our families, for students who wanted to drive. Our recommendation, and seeing how it hasn't been on for the last several years, we did not have it on the student fee sheet because we would anticipate the same going into next year.
Okay, so you said these are the same fees that we had for this last year?
Correct.
Okay, I guess I would ask in the future, when you bring like a student fees or something to the board, if you could indicate, this and then last year, so it's very easy to see, because that was my first question, is how is this different, if at all, from last year?
Yeah, and I would definitely have, if there was changes, I would have definitely done that, but. Yeah.
Okay, I guess then if there's no changes, maybe just something on the sheet itself that says this is the same as last year, because I was trying to figure that out myself.
Yep,
going through
duly
that.
noted.
Thank you. Any other discussion regarding student fees? All right, athletic trainer RFP.
So we had the athletic trainer RFP opening on Friday, February 25th. It was for a 3-year contract with the 2 optional extension years. 2 vendors provided proposals, 2 vendors provided no proposal. Our current provider, ATI, provided the lowest proposal with the first year cost being $95,000 with 4% increases each year after that. I did go back to them and ask them if they could do 3% increases instead of 4, which they agreed to. We'll bring that tally to the board for approval at the March board meeting.
And we're happy with the services we've received from that vendor?
Yes, we are happy with ATI. They've been a very good partner.
Any questions regarding that?
Will we have the same staff members here? Are they staying or are we?
They did note that they noted that the same staff members would be still here.
Are we looking at a 3-year or a 5-year?
It's a 3-year with 2 optional extension years.
Optional individually?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to Sunrise contract extension.
The SACID member districts are working on the extension for Sunrise. We do have a draft agreement from Sunrise, which is provided in your packet. We are still working on a couple of language concerns, though. One of those concerns is regarding the discount for shared routes, which has historically been at 50% and is now requested at 20%. So we're hoping we can meet in the middle with them, maybe at around 35%. The other concern is in regards to how and when requested routes are communicated and defined. This language will affect the overall increase as noted in the contract, which varies between a 0% increase and 15% increase, depending on how many of those requested routes that Sunrise can accommodate. As a reminder, as this contract is completed with SACID and the other member districts, all member districts will need to agree to the contract language. So we're hopeful that the contract language will be cleaned up soon and that Sunrise is agreeable to all of our changes. As soon as we have that final contract, it'll be brought to the board for approval.
Any questions regarding that?
Are they experiencing shortages in staff?
Yes. We're still close to 50% of them being able to accommodate our routes. So they're still very short.
Okay, is it typically like turnover like of every day, more like morning to afternoon? Like what is the consistency of some of the drivers? Do we know?
I don't know if it's not changing that often day to day, but it's, I know they have their core set of drivers that are showing up every day.
And does Sunrise support the feeder districts as well?
Is 33 is part of SACID, yes.
Okay, have they experienced, I know that at the elementary district, they experienced a lot of like breakdowns recently. Are we seeing any of our routes being affected in that manner?
As far as breakdowns like buses breaking down?
Yeah.
I have not heard of any.
I didn't quite understand Exhibit B. It looks like if we get the service of 100%, which is what we're contracting, we pay more than.
Right, so if they're.
Don't get, I didn't quite understand why we should be paying a premium for the service that we're expecting.
So they're basically saying if they're able to perform 100% of the routes that we are requesting, then it's going to be a 15% increase.
Okay.
So that was their initial contract, is that they came and said, we just want a 15% increase. And the SACID districts went back to them and said, you're not able to perform, like for us, less than half of our routes that we are requesting, so why would we give you 15%? And so then they came back with an increase like this, so that if they're able to perform 70% of those routes or less, then there's a 0% increase from our current rates. And so then it goes up until the 15%.
Okay, I guess I don't quite understand. If we know the routes that we need and that's what we're contracting, it seems like we should be getting a discount if we're getting less percent than having to pay a premium to get what we originally decided we needed. I'm confused at the concept here.
Is it like an incentive for them to do their job?
So it's not an incentive for them to do their job. They're basically, again, they've come and said we're able to perform all the routes that they can perform, that we want them to perform, then that increase is 15%. Similar to Illinois Central saying, these are the routes that we have, your increase next year is based on the contract, which is with 3% for next year. So this is more of a penalty for us, penalty for them than an incentive.
Who's picking up the routes that they're not able to pick up?
We have contracted with seven different bus vendors other than Sunrise to complete all these routes.
Kathy, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I'm saying that I'm assuming that they're using that incentive as a way to give them the ability to hire more drivers to meet those needs. So, trying to bridge the gap to service that center, but they can't do it without additional funding that we're not willing to give them.
It's like that all over the bus industry. Every bus company is having a lot of trouble attracting and retaining drivers. The company I work for, they bring in 3 and they lose 4.
Look at it that way, what they are saying does actually make sense. It's not in our best interest, but it is very logical.
So is-
Yeah, and as I get information from other school districts as they're looking at regular busing contracts, every increase that they have seen is over 10%.
So is this on a district-by-district basis, or is this globally?
District by
with SASE?
district by district basis.
So we,
Increase, are you asking, or the need?
well, the routes and the increases and things. So although we're signing a contract through SACID, we're dealing with Sunrise on a district basis then?
Yeah, everybody
So
signs their.
the terms are with SACID, but our service is limited to our district then?
Correct.
So when we say that we're accepting 70% of the routes at 0%, we're happy with that, and if we want everything that we need, we have to pay more. Is that basically what?
We're saying,
saying.
yeah, if they're able to perform all the routes that we are requesting, then we'll pay 15%.
Rich, I think another way to look at it, and I might be making this more confusing, but I hope not. I think the bus industry would like to charge the 15% increase, period. But recognizing that they can't fulfill their routes, they put in a graded system by which the only time that they would get that 15% increase is if they meet that maximum threshold. I think generally speaking, given the context of the industry, they would prefer that 15% be applied across the board regardless of what the percentage rate is for fulfilling the route. But recognizing that districts are not amenable to that, they put in this differentiated system by which the increase can be applied.
So the 70%, I mean, that's just sort of an arbitrary number based on their way of getting up to the 15% by not being able to do 30% of what we need? Is that?
My guess is, yeah, that probably is an arbitrary number. But like I said, I think the bus industry would like to have that 15% applied regardless of what percentage route service level they are at, but recognizing that that's a hard pill to swallow for districts, they put in this leveling system by which the percentage changes based on the percent that they're able to fulfill.
Wasn't this our response? Wasn't this our response when they came up with the 15% increase?
Correct, that was the
This was
15%.
their way of kind of getting out of paying that.
Correct, the 15% was the initial request from Sunrise, and we came back with this graded increase to help the districts.
So the 0% at 0% increase at 70% of the routes is based on this year's current contract? Or are they raising the amount?
The 0% is based off of this current year's contract, correct?
Okay, so the 15% isn't sort of a premium on a new contract? It's
No.
additional service that they're providing
It's not
between
additional
70 and
service.
100%.
This was their new contract, right?
Yeah, this
With
is,
the new contract,
the
they
15% is
wanted-
increase off of last year's rates.
Okay.
When does the percentage of routes that they're accomplishing, when is that measured?
So that's some of the question that we have, within the contract, I believe it says 60 days, where I think we're trying to adjust that route so it makes a little more sense.
Because that's certainly something that could potentially come and go throughout the year, and you don't want to say, well, you got 100% in the first month, and now you're back down to 80%.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just a reminder, there's still questions out there for Sunrise, so this is not a done deal, and all those questions can be clarified as SASB works with Sunrise on finalizing the contract, because there are other districts that have questions that still need to be figured out before the final contract is brought to the board for approval.
Yeah. So a route is based on a bus or miles of a bus or number of students picked up? I mean, if you've got a bus that's picking up one student, does that count as a route towards our
it's still a route.
premium?
One route is,
So one route is one bus trip,
yes.
basically,
Basically, a path that the bus follows with a list of students on that path.
regardless of how many students.
It depends on the
How far
route. Some
they go
routes
and
have more, some routes have less.
Okay.
Anything else about Sunrise? All right, Quest Food Management.
All right. We believe serving as many students as possible is beneficial to our students and families. So with that in mind, and with federal waivers ending, which we are currently taking advantage of, we have two options if we want to continue to serve free meals to all students for next year. The first option is to have Quest serve free meals to all students, and the district basically pays for that cost. Quest has noted that it'll probably cost more than $200,000 to do that. The second option is to apply for the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, which is part of the National School Lunch Program. This option is normally limited to schools with more than 60% of their students eligible for free and reduced lunches. Since we are currently part of the National School Lunch Program, we were able to determine that we are close to 50% eligible for free and reduced, but still obviously less than that 60%. So with that in mind, the CEP option is only beneficial if we would serve over 850 meals per day. We are currently serving over 900 meals per day, so we could take the chance that we'll continue to serve that many meals, but it would be still a risk. The other aspect to consider with CEP is that we would need to go out to bid probably within the next month or so, and then we would need to take the lowest bid as per required in state code. There is current legislation, which appears that it will be passing soon, that would allow schools to have a little more flexibility in making a selection, which is similar to the recent legislation for transportation contracts. The expected start for the next school year, if that does pass, would be the 23-24 school year. So with that, administration is recommending that we do not utilize the National School Lunch Program for the 22-23 school year, and we go back to how meals were served at the beginning of the 1920 school year. And so as we go back to this program, we'll ask Quest and our internal staff to find better ways to provide as many meals to those in need as possible, which may include electronic applications or increased outreach to families, better communication on how families can fill out the fee waiver requests, and the application process in general of how fee waivers are accepted. So we'll be evaluating during the 22-23 school year, make a decision in the middle of that school year and how we want to proceed for the following school year.
So your recommendation is to move back away from the providing free lunch to all of our students?
Correct.
Do we have any idea what impact that would have on on the families, whether they would consider that to be a big issue or not?
I mean, considering we're serving about 1,950 to 1,000 students free meals per day right now, again, it would be probably a pretty decent impact to our families, which is why we would want to make sure that we have that outreach to the families, we have better communication to them, filling out the applications, and making that much more accessible for our families.
And in addition to that, we're going to monitor the situation as we get into next year. And should there be more families that would need free meals. We have options and plans to figure out how to provide that through Quest, probably at a cost to the district, but we are looking at funds by which we can do that. One of the challenges right now is with the House bill that's pending out there, it's House Bill 4813. That could completely change to the benefit of both students and the district how the school lunch program works. If you recall, at the beginning of the year, we tried to, and Dr. Dwyer or Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we tried to provide meals that fit within that, free meals within that framework of the National School Lunch Program, and honestly, the kids were not that thrilled about it, and we were able to work with Quest to change the options, and that's one of the considerations was by changing the options, more kids took the free lunches. However, if we went to the National School Lunch Program, we would have to revert back to very restricted menu items, and that's kind of the dilemma that we're in. So moving and remaining with Quest allows us to do several things. Number one, it allows us to offer meals that are of interest to kids, and obviously bolster our free lunch program by getting the information out to families. Should we see that there are more families that need it beyond those that apply formally through our process, we do have a couple plans in place to look at what options we might have to provide that at a cost to the district, but we are looking at funding sources for that. And then the third thing is that it gives us the opportunity to figure out or to at least monitor what happens to this House bill. Because if this House bill does pass, then it gives us the time needed to go out for rebidding and going to a school program that allows us to not take the lowest bidder, which is a benefit to everybody.
If we're thinking about making this change for next year, I think we need to start sending messaging out to our families like now, like right away, so that they're aware that this is a change we're looking at, and that if this is going to be a very significant impact to them, they've got opportunity to get back to us and say, what can I do? We can't just wait on that.
Yep.
I want to,
Go ahead, Penny.
oh, thank you. I just want to say, I think it might, I know that at the elementary level, I think they do take advantage of that programming. My concern is to waiting for the 23-24, if I understood you correctly, is there's the feeder district that has 400 students is they take advantage of this program. With the amount of evictions happening in our community, I'd be concerned with the food availability to our kids. So I think it would be something that I would really like for us to kind of look at. I also think that sometimes when you strictly just utilize an online registration process, I think these are the moments where we can see that conversations between parents and the school representatives that deal with registration is beneficial, because that's the way that you're going to have parents know about what's available and know how to apply and know where to apply. So I think that this would be something really important for us to kind of take into account when registration happens every year.
Yeah, and for context too, the primary vehicle for our registration process was online, but there was also scheduled days during the summer by which families could come in where we would help them with the paperwork and walk them through the steps. But to everybody's point, we definitely want to make sure that information gets out sooner and more frequently, because we do want to try to meet the needs of our families as best as possible.
And oftentimes I do think parents don't know where the free and reduced lunch application is or how to figure that out. It is a process. You do have to, obviously there's a certain way that you have to fill it out. So I do feel that it's worth us looking into. I am concerned of that, we would wait on something so important.
Right, and that's why we, like I said, have those days where parents can come in and we walk them through the process, because you're right, it is a little intimidating when you look at it, especially trying to figure out the scales and so forth, and that's why we do sit down with them and walk them through that process.
If say District 33 does qualify for some of this aid, but we don't because we've got, children coming in from 34 and 25 as well, is there any way we can be creative with how we manage this? Because then you've got families that were getting a benefit when their children were, up through 8th grade, and then all of a sudden they're not getting it at high school just because the demographics are diluted a little bit at this level. Is there some way we can be creative about that to keep them getting the same service?
Well, one of the discussion points that we had today, just processing through this, was identifying funding sources in our budget by which if we wanted to go back to the levels of free lunch offered that we have this year, it would be something that the district would pay the cost for, because it would not apply, because we would be on a different program than we are right now, but make that available to everybody, or as many as possible. So to a certain degree, it would revert back to the same status of what we are. It's just that behind the scenes, in terms of how the funding works and who pays for what, it's a little bit different. So those are some of the options that we're coming up with right now.
Do you guys have a, like a cost, like number? You said the cost of the district, is there
It would be in the $200,000 ballpark if we were to resume the services we have right now through the Department of Agriculture grant that we've been utilizing through the federal government this year, but which does expire.
okay, I was gonna say, is that something we can cover with ESSER funds?
Possibly, and
Yeah,
that's
we
been
could.
part of
Right.
the conversation.
So one of the things that we need to do is, as a year closes, take a look at the ESSER grant to see what's remaining and budget accordingly with that, as well as if that's not enough, to see what other parts of the regular budget could accommodate that.
Do we make accommodations during vacations for student meals?
I'm not sure I understand.
Like
Like
Christmas break, Thanksgiving
Oh,
break?
We did
Easter,
during the
yeah,
pandemic.
anything.
During the pandemic, when it hit hard, we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
But
But
last
during the
school year we
normal
did.
school year, no. Like in pre-pandemic times, the free lunch was only during the school day.
Okay, because of the way the program is set up, or because of the budget? I mean,
It's
kids
really
still have to eat when they're not coming to school.
correct, but it was really both, because we were also coordinating that with the other districts it was a community effort to make sure that families got meals throughout the break. Whereas, again, pre-pandemic, that was not the scenario. It was offered through the school lunch program during the school day.
So do we know if that's a negative impact on our students in not being able to get the meals during vacation days?
From what I can recall, we stopped doing that because they weren't really being picked up.
Okay.
But Rich, to your point, I would say that that is an example of the fact that like the needs of these children don't fall off when they come to high school. So I think that, like I said, I think that's why it's so important to kind of keep that in mind. And I know that at least at District 33, they do renew the grant was for 3 years. So I'm not sure where it is right now. I'm not sure if you know, Giovanni, but I know that every 3 years they apply for that grant.
Every 3 years, the community eligibility, I can never say that, the community eligibility provision, it needs to be renewed every 3 years.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, so, so like I said, definitely worth looking at. I think obviously the community is definitely plagued by poverty, so, and food is obviously really essential for them, so it's definitely worth looking into. And I know that a lot of families do benefit from it, for sure. That program is, for a lot of working families, it's a huge blessing, because I've encountered a lot of parents that really do benefit from that program.
Yeah, we're well aware that that a lot of families are benefiting from the program. That's why we want to make sure that we have that community outreach and get to all those families that we know of, to make sure they fill out that free and reduced application so that they can take care of that and so that they can get those meals that they need.
I know you said that if we wanted to continue to serve all of the children that we're currently serving on our own dime, it would be, I think you said $200,000?
Yeah, at least.
Certainly, some of the kids that are eating it now are eating it because it's there, why not? And then you've got the people that are eating it because they desperately need it. I mean, are we able to get some numbers on the children that would qualify for free lunch when they're 8th graders, but then wouldn't get it when they're 9th graders if we don't have this program? Those are the kids that I'm most concerned about with losing that.
Yeah, well, technically, we can't really get the information from Lehman so they have the parents and families will have to come to the district and fill out those applications.
We can't find out how many current 8th graders that are going to be 9th graders for us next year are getting the free lunches?
Well, they serve everybody free at 33, and so as they come to District 94, that's not information that we have available. I think the quality of the food has greatly increased since the last time District 94 tried the National School Lunch Program. With that said, it still isn't as good as what Quest was serving 2 years ago when they didn't have those requirements in the National School Lunch Program. But I think the kids, especially those coming from District 33, like the meals. I think the juniors and seniors are sometimes wishing for what used to be.
Everybody's getting the same lunch though, right? Regardless if.
There's multiple options that they can go through our lunch line, and as long as they select a grain and a vegetable and a fruit, they can combine that in any manner that they want to. And so if it's cheeseburger or pizza or with a celery and an orange, they can definitely do that in any type of situation.
But it's not like when kids are in line, you can tell, well, this kid's getting the free lunch and this kid's not, you know, this kid.
No,
There's
that's
nothing like that.
no, there's nothing like that. That's a requirement of the National School Lunch Program that we're not supposed to do that.
Okay.
I guess I have a question to your comment that students weren't coming to pick up the lunch during vacations. Is that because of transportation issues, or that they didn't know that they were available during vacations?
No, I
Do we
remember
know?
we did a couple things. Number one, and again, going back to the complete lockdown and the scenario that was, we both provided lunches here and advertised that a lot and worked with 33 on coordinating dates and times and availability and hours so that, you know, kind of a one-stop shop. But then we also went out and delivered meals, and the number of meals being picked up by us when we delivered to the apartments or whatever location that we kind of set up as satellites decreased over the years, or not years, over time. So they were not taken.
I will say, Rich, though, there is that piece, even though I do agree with Dr. Chang as far as that goes, but I do think that there is that layer sometimes of like transportation, because, you know, there's families that were, you know, the parent that's home doesn't drive. And I also feel like there was also that layer of, you know, it was, I think, only specific times, specific days of the week. So if you missed the day, you know, the families didn't take advantage of it. But I do think that there was a transportation piece to it.
Okay, so we communicate to our community and let them know about this and encourage them to sign up for the free and reduced. What can we do to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks and either misses the communication or doesn't understand or have the ability to do this electronic sign up? How do we make sure that nobody just falls through the cracks?
Well, it's not going to just be electronic. There'll be various different ways for them to sign up for the application. And so again, it'll just be a lot of communication from our staff. We have a list of those students that are directly certified from the state of Illinois. So if they're Medicaid or TANF or SNAP, we have all that information now. And so so we know the students that are currently here. We know what their situation at least was during this school year. So we can definitely have more outreach and communication to those families, and then just working on those families coming in from Lehman.
And I wonder if it would be beneficial if we could figure out a way to kind of where, as Bob was saying, there could be a better pulse on who qualifies currently. I don't know how we could do that, whether we could do that when they come over and sign up for classes, or you know, during like a step-up day. I don't know how we would do that, but I do think that it would be nice in this way to communicate with District 33 of those that already take advantage of that program.
Yeah, I've
So
actually
if we
asked for
could
that
find a way
information.
to do that.
I've asked for that information from 33, and they denied to give me that information.
Really?
Well, in the upcoming new discussions between
that
94 and
could be
33, that
something
sounds like a topic we definitely want to
Exactly,
dig into.
For sure.
And also realize you can apply, or our families can apply for the free lunch at any time. So it's not just right at the beginning of the year. And this year, we actually sent out reminders throughout the year, especially right after the break, to let families know that that's available to them.
I think the benefit's been to the past year, more families are now taking advantage of that free lunch option because there really are no sign-up requirements. So I think now that more people have gotten used to having that, they're going to want to continue to utilize that opportunity. So hopefully that can increase some of that sign-up as well, too.
Yeah, and I do also think, though, Will, that there are still a lot of families that aren't fully aware that that's available and the advantage of that. And also, too, some families will fear, like, the certain box that you put, so like I said, I don't think it's, that we haven't been proactive about it at the registration level. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's definitely an opportunity to kind of engage those parents and those needs. But obviously, I think we need to be more intentional in figuring out how to best, that those kiddos are identified and don't go under the radar. And as Bob said, that is definitely something that, as a board, I would like us to kind of be intentional about in those conversations with the feeder districts.
So I don't know if there's a way of doing this, but it sounds like maybe we establish a metric of a percentage or a number that we would expect to be able to offer lunches, and then we kind of track that. And if we're below whatever that number we feel should be, then we do a little more reach out and things. Try and encourage, set a metric, set a goal, and say this is where we should be, and try and see how close we can get to that.
Yeah, that's partly why in the conversation has been, sorry, let me back up. The free lunch offerings obviously have been different during the pandemic.
Sure.
But regardless, the information of making that available to families is the same. Whether it's we have free lunch, please come get it, or we have the application, please come get it. The message is we want to get that out. So within the last couple of years, the discussion has been getting that information out regularly. If you recall, at the beginning of the year, we felt like we did not have the numbers of kids taking our free lunch this year as compared to last year, and felt like that was low. And so Dan and Will worked with Quest to change the offerings, because that was one of the things that came through was the kids did not like the selection. So because we did feel like that was low, worked with Quest, and in the current parameters of the program, we can change that, and Quest was great in working with us. In changing the menu options to what Dan described it to be, the numbers went up. So yeah, that would be a continual process.
So, I mean, it seems like there's data that can be
Correct.
developed, and it's
Yep.
something that we can track and know if we're making progress or not.
Yep.
Yeah, we're continually monitoring the process and how things are going with our food service. We definitely stay on top of that.
So really, it's just a matter of bringing those numbers to the board to review. I don't think we've ever seen any of those numbers.
No, Dan has shared that
I think
in the past. It was like, originally, if I'm not mistaken, it was around, 800 that we were serving, but we felt that was low. And
It was actually,
now,
I think, like 500 that we were serving, and
Right.
that's when we changed the menu items, and then that's when we're serving much closer to 1,000.
yeah, that was brought in the reports in,
Yep.
in the fall.
Well, I guess, mentioning the number once in the meeting doesn't really give us anything to track, so.
Well, it was a report about a lunch program, and we did indicate that it was 500, and we were trying to shoot for more, then came back with the increase. So, I mean, it could be formalized more in, a diagram, but those reports, because it was important to us, was definitely a point of illustration that we wanted to provide to the board to show that we had efforts in reaching out to our community.
I understand, but we didn't get to see that there were actions being taken and that level was going up or down. I mean, we have all these other reports and data on suspensions and truancies and failures and things. This is something that could be added in there as something we would track. It sounds like an important activity that we should be doing.
Especially if we're going to be making these changes starting next year, it sounds like it is something that we definitely want to keep tabs on as to how this is affecting the families that we serve. As far as this initial messaging, something will start going out to families this month to set the stage for the changes?
So the first step is, I wanted to bring this and have this discussion with the board today. And then we need to get a contract, a one-year extension contract with Quest. And then we can start working on the communication out to the families. But I suspect all that will happen very quickly.
Okay, just want to make sure that the families have as quick a heads up as possible so they can be aware of this change.
And I'd like to see if we could, what is sent out to the parents, because I don't remember seeing anything on that, but I don't know if, I missed it, or I would like kind of like what we send out to parents. What are they seeing and what option is available to them when it comes to food? If we could do that.
That's something we'll be able to do, Moses? Okay, that sounds good.
Do you do surveys with students as far as what their menu preferences are and feedback on how the food is and things like that?
On
So
occasion, you can-
we, before the pandemic, we had convened some student groups together, small focus groups to talk about food offerings. Once the pandemic hit, that was very difficult to do. We did so, again, though, as part of mine, Ms. Howard's, and Mr. Martino's meetings with all the juniors and seniors in the fall. Cafeteria offerings were definitely a topic of discussion, and one of the impetuses we had for looking at some changes to the menu offerings, along with the lower than expected number of kids taking advantage of those opportunities.
I was gonna say, is there something like survey-wise that we can send out to all the students, like across all like the grade levels? Like take a couple minutes, like the day, like besides the menus, and say, hey, are you interested in the free lunch, just so we can get a good head count. So besides like the
Or even to the parents too, like a survey overall emailed out to parents and students, where a week they
like
could fill it
besides
out.
like just the parents, like the
Mhm.
students as well.
We can certainly do that. One of the things we're going to have to do first, though, is definitely make a decision on what we want, what options we would want to make available in that regard. Back to Dan's point about structurally, financially, systematically, what directions do we feel comfortable going, and then making those the options. I do hesitate at times to make too broad of a survey, because one of the answers is going to be Pizza Hut Monday, Taco Bell Tuesday, McDonald's Wednesday, which obviously, for legal reasons we can't do. But I think we need to narrow those parameters
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
gather that input.
And through that survey too, kind of maybe, I don't know, include a question on there on like what barriers or what, what has happened in the home life that could create that lack of accessibility to food, or, I think that is important for us to know, like the barriers that our families face to providing food to their children.
Got it.
They may not even have a kitchen. Yeah.
Not just the evictions, but the way food prices are climbing these days. That's makes it even harder. All right, so it sounds like we're going to need some further discussion on this topic going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anything else regarding Quest Food Management? All right, then. We will need to be going into executive session. So need a motion to go into executive session for collective negotiating matters. And there will be no action taken after executive session.
Second.
Roll call, please.